To the third and last stream of today. We're in the last stage. We're boiling up the wort. We're have like what, 20 minutes left? Not even. Actually, you can see that I removed the cover from the container here. The reason for this is the pre-boil gravity was supposed to be around 1.045, but it was actually, after adjusting the temperature, was about 1.039, which is a bit on the low side. So with this, I let it open, and with this it should evaporate a bit more, basically making the whole beer a bit more condensed, having more gravity, which would mean we need more body and, well, more alcohol content after the fermentation. So yeah, given that we're close to 20, what are we supposed to put in? Irish moss. Okay, it's fine. Like a couple of minutes won't change anything. We can put it in there. Give it a quick stir. And what else? Then now we have 10 minutes, and then we put in all the other things. So, in the meantime, what we could do with those 10 minutes, we could start the yeast. What does starting the yeast mean? Well, basically yeast needs sugar and water, and when it eats that sugar, it starts to basically replicate and get better. And usually it's a kind of a good idea to take a bit of the wort, like we have one over here. Let us clean everything again. Take a bit of it and basically add the yeast first, because usually what you could do is basically add the yeast at the end, because the yeast are in a dry form. They're basically kind of like a powder. So you could add it just to, after you transfer everything to the fermenter, you could add it in there. But generally, if you start the yeast, which means giving them kind of a perfect conditions before actually doing the brew, these will basically start faster, so they will finish the whole thing sooner. So I isolated a bit of the wort, not a lot. And now the thing is that the yeast have a temperature they like to live in. Here I have a packet of yeast. This is US-05, basically an ale yeast. And basically it says the temperature range from 12 to 25 degrees. So you don't want to go higher than 25. Basically you're going to kill them. You're going to pour it in and it's going to die immediately. So ideally at 15 to 22. So generally it's nice to cool off this beer, this wort, to about 22 degrees. And with that, add the yeast in here, close it off, let it stay for a couple of minutes. And once we actually start, when you're done with transferring the beer into the fermenter, well, the wort, that will be still the wort, it doesn't have the yeast added. At that point, the started yeast should be already like alive and doing stuff. So I need cold water. So for that, I actually put some in a fridge. Okay, here I have just some cold water, and I can just pour it in here. Well, maybe without this, it'll be faster. And the important thing is, at this point, we're dealing with, well, cold beer, with cold wort, which means that everything that touches it has to be sterilized. Otherwise, everything will just get infected. So this is why you want to wash everything that touches everything and just keep it clean. Okay, how much time? Still have like 6 minutes. That's totally fine. Actually, we can use the thermometer to help us stir this. Move it here, and we can move the cold water in here, so you kind of see what I'm doing here. So yeah, like I said, we want this to be in the about 22 degrees. We're at 40. That is definitely too high. Just try to exchange the heat and get it colder. Yeah, the water outside is nice and cold. Yeah, now we're at 40. So you can see the temperature is going down nicely. Yeah, and this is a moment where it's very easy to accidentally, touch something with your hands were, disinfected or something else wasn't, and yeah, end up with infecting that piece. So you really have to be careful about what is being exchanged here. Okay, this is still cold. And let it stay there for a bit. Give this beer a stir. I must admit, with this weather, when it's that hot, it's not perfect weather. It's a perfect weather to go to the beach, but not perfect weather to brew a beer. If you're wondering what I'm doing here, there's a bit of condensation here, and I don't want this condensation to start dripping onto the beer. Okay, this. So how we're doing here? Okay, we're at 30. Okay, gonna wash the hands a bit. How much time do we have left? Okay, we have about 3 minutes for that. What's the temperature now? Okay, we're at 25, so that is a good temperature to add the yeast. So I can just sprinkle the yeast here. Again, the whole pack will probably serve for about, yeah, like a 40-50 liters. It really depends, but you don't have to put on the whole pack of the yeast in. And now we can actually take it out because there's no point of cooling it anymore. Maybe I leave it in the sun so it's a bit warmer. Hopefully not too warm. And okay, just get all the yeast in there, nicely mixed out. So yeah, with this we can put on the cover again, just so nothing gets in. Close it off, and we're done with that part. So the yeast is gonna start now, so it should basically start eating the bit of sugar that are in here. And in our case, we can actually open the timer now, I guess. I didn't ask about it this time, but again, if anyone has any kind of questions, feel free to ask them and I will try to answer. I don't see any specific questions, so I'll just go to the timer so then I can be a bit more precise. So, timer. What we're supposed to do is add the grapefruit peel and the grapefruit juice at 10 minutes left. So basically now, this is about 10 minutes. So you're putting the grapefruit peel. Now putting in the grapefruit juice. Still has a bit of pulp, but not nearly enough to make a difference. And now we're starting to add the hops bit by bit. So every minute, kind of a handful of the hops should go in. Give it the last stir. And in the meantime, basically every minute I will add a bit more. And in the meantime, I will get the cold water that I mentioned before that is in the freezer. So yeah, here's some ice, or it might be actually ice water. Not sure if it actually, the whole thing managed to freeze, possibly not. It is from this morning, so yeah, there is still some there's still some water inside, but should be cold enough for us to use it. Okay, let's just unblock. Okay, a bit more hops again. And yeah, it's basically a kind of an ice shell for that, which is not really a problem. It actually might help us to put the fermenter in. But yes, the reason why this is very important is because we have to do something called the cold strike. And one of the reasons why we do the cold strike is to actually make the beer clear. But also, if we don't, the beer will, well, the wort, when it cools off slowly, it starts to build up different enzymes that, well, honestly just do not taste well. So what you want to do is basically take this beer that is boiling, so it's about 100 degrees, right? Get it down to about, yeah, like 30 degrees, or like, well, 20, something that the yeast will be okay with. in a matter of, honestly, kind of minutes. You really want to do it as fast as possible. In this case, I'm going to do it very manually. I'm going to basically dip this jug in here in the cold water. This is not the fastest way of doing that. And actually, I might reuse something bigger, not this one. I could use the previous one that we used. That should be a bit easier for me. Keep the timer open. We're at 6 minutes. Again, a bit more. Okay, we can actually take out the bigger pieces of the ice, so it's easier to add them later. That is bloody cold. Ah, yes, it is cold. So yes, so I will do it kind of manually. I will be adding the I will be basically adding the wort in a fermenter to a cold, basically giving it a cold bath. In more professional setup, you would have a circulation of the wort that goes through a counterflow chiller, which basically has cold water feeding on one side, and your hot wort meets the cold water and the exchange heat, and this way it can cool it down very quickly. Unfortunately, I do not have that cooler in here, so I have to do kind of the old school way of just, well, using ice, which is still acceptable. It's something that doesn't really scale if you want to do like a lot of beer. If you're trying to do much more beer, more than just a jug, then you will need something better than just ice. So I can actually move it here. This fermenter, I cooled it off already. Okay, we're at 4 minutes. But yes, we have here all our components, but kind of most importantly, we have all our hoses in here as well. So you have to definitely make sure that all the hoses or all the pipes are clean as well. You definitely have to pour the cleaning agent through them to make sure that you washed everything properly, because otherwise this is the place where your wort might get infected. Although in this case we're talking about we're going to pour in hot wort, so it's not that much of a problem, because we're going to actually cool it off once it's in a fermenter. But like I said, it's quite important to clean everything properly. So just basically don't take any chances. If you're able to clean it, then clean it, and that will save you some work down the line. So basically making sure that everything is nice and clean. You can actually clean this too. And yeah. So what with this, you're wondering how we're gonna take this from this container into this container. Well, we're gonna use, well, physics this time, and we're gonna use Siphon. So you're gonna see exactly how that works in a second. But yeah. So for that, I might need a container as well. And for this, I'll be actually doing stuff from the floor, because for the siphon to work, you need the difference in height. So I'll actually use something here. It might be not possible, might be not necessary, but we'll see about that. And we can move I can quickly check if it's. Yep, it is doing something. Quite slowly, but it is doing something. One can tell. And okay, we have like one last addition before we turn off the heat or flame out. And yes, kind of double check if we added everything. Yes, we added all the hops, all the stuff. Yes, seems like everything is in there. Another thing that we want to do now is to measure the gravity after the boil. Like I mentioned, it's how you calculate how much alcohol there is, and also we can see with the gravity that we kind of expected to have, because the recipe kind of told us what is the expected gravity. Like I mentioned, the pre-boil gravity was a bit lower. I left it open, so I'm hoping that now the gravity, the original gravity, so the gravity before the fermentation, after the boil, is going to be at the level that we should have, and yeah, we will see about that. Of course, you know, if it's slightly off, it's fine. It's not like the beer like spoiled. It's not going to taste exactly as expected from the recipe. Let me look at the timer, and yeah, timer is done. So turning off the heater. Okay, so now this is off, and we're supposed to add the last piece of hops on the flame out. With this, let us take well, we will actually do this together with our siphoning process. Okay. Right now, we want this to first kind of settle down, everything to basically to go down, be more stable. Because if we want to siphon it, we don't want to siphon all the other gunk that is in there. This is why with the siphon, you can actually see that it has a small cap in here. So the idea is that this touches the bed, and it cannot actually suck anything from here till here. And the idea is that all the basically heavy things are going to be at the bottom. So we're just gonna suck in the liquid. But yes, we will see. We'll see about that in a second. Well, we can let it stay a bit. We're ready with the cold water. We can move this. We can move this. And yeah, okay, let's prepare it then. So with this, it does kind of go through your physics lessons long time ago. But yeah, the water will always want to be at the same level. Yep. Okay. So if we fill this one, of course everything is assuming there is a bit more space and there's no air in the pipes. So with that setup, if we pour it in here, okay, now it's perfect. And now it has a clip. So if you close it with this clip, the water will be basically, it won't be able to move. Like, right, it's a vacuum, so it won't be able to go. But what we can do now is having our fermenter here, and here just, this water has to go somewhere. We don't want to drink it, so we're first going to dump it in here, and once the actual beer starts flowing, we're going to switch to the fermenter. I'm sorry, that is not really, it's not really a visible thing right now, but you kind of have to trust me that this is this is how it works. So yeah, actually this seems to be a bit low. I will use something to make it a bit better, a bit higher in here, and now we should be fine. Okay, let us try to siphon the beer out. Okay, now we're at beer. So now we start going through this. Yeah, I can see there is a lot of stuff like hops going in now. It's okay. You have to remember that all the stuff will kind of go in the on the bottom of the fermenter anyway, so it is okay. It is also very hot, so oh, I think we lost suction a bit. Can I let it out? That sometimes happens, and this is why this is not a perfect way of doing this process. Sometimes might need to basically, yeah, kind of restart it and do it again. But hey, at least you're able to do it with your regular tools, with regular kitchen, and you don't have to make holes in your pots, which, I mean, usually you have a specific containers just for making beer, which are not exactly pots, but yeah, if you have limited space, that's kind of the way you need to go. Okay, I'm making a mess of the kitchen a bit, but it should be fine. Okay. Hey, let us continue with this. Again, part of it, it's not beer, so we want to let it out. But now, when you actually go into the beer, we just want to get the wort. We don't want to get anything else. This flowing slowly. You can maybe you can actually see that it's going in there. The main thing is that if the top that the cap that I showed you over there, the moment when it actually goes, yeah, let's stop again. And it basically starts getting air. This is the moment when it's, well, it will stop working properly. And also when it gets filled out with different gunk from that. And in this case, we do have things like, you know, the peels and bunch of hops. So it is a bit more tricky to get it as we want it to. And actually the tube here is also kind of tiny bit pressed, making it harder to for the wort to squeeze through. So yeah, if you're lucky, you're able to do this whole process in just one go and just one time. But if you're unlucky, or just generally, you know, if life happens, you might need to do this more than one time. And of course, more than one time means you always basically lose a bit of the beer in this process, but, well, unfortunately that's how it goes. Actually tilt it a bit. Oh, honestly, oh. Yeah, that's the thing. That sound was basically it's sucking the air in, and you do not want that. Yeah, once in a while you can see the basically bunch of hops and stuff. It kind of gets lodged in. Generally, the hard things like hops will interfere with this process a bit. And what you can do at the end of it, there's still some wort left, like in our case. You can basically just get a funnel, a regular old kitchen funnel, and of course, you know, disinfect it as always. We are dealing with hot wort, but still should make sure that it's fine. And, well, first, what you could do is get a bit of the wort just to use for our measurement of the original gravity. So we can do like this. And that's the kind of sad part, that right now what we are what we ended up with is very much the all the kind of heaviest stuff that is in there. So what you might try to do is to kind of isolate it, just get the liquid, try not to get all the gunk, which is usually kind of hard. But you know, if you're patient enough. Yep. And with this you can actually see the color of the wort. You can see that it's quite hazy, mostly because, yeah, our are additions of oh, we don't want to use that anymore. Our addition of delayed hops and all the other stuff. So we can leave it to cool off for now. And like I said, we can try to get a bit more of the wort, hopefully without too many nasty stuff. Okay. Okay. There's still some. We're here at what, probably half a gallon. It's supposed to be a gallon, but it might be a bit less. And also remember that, you know, the amount of wort that is going into a fermenter, it might be more or less that there was in a recipe, but also this is not exactly the amount that will make into your beer, because that amount is also, yeah, all the hops, all the other stuff that is basically floating in the beer right now. And when you transfer basically the beer out of the fermenter into bottles, which you also use the siphoning method, in that case you will also lose a bit of volume and a bit of beer. And this is why generally, like, you know, if you make generally more beer, you don't make like a 1 gallon batch, you make like 5 gallon batch or more, you're kind of losing less. So it's in this case, you know, percentage wise, you would lose a bit less. And also, again, depends on your equipment, how well can you filter it out. If you're using a fermenter which is not like that, but is actually a canonical fermenter that is a basically specific shape for that, and is able to be open from the bottom, then it will allow you to remove all the thrub, which is all the dead yeast and all the other stuff that basically were added to the beer that you don't want anymore. And then you're basically end up with just pure beer, because, you know, after a week or 2 weeks of fermentation, and, you know, you're not supposed to like mix it or shake it or anything like that, you end up with pretty good separation between what is supposed to be in a beer and what's not supposed to be in a beer. Okay, I think I extracted as much as possible from that. So we're at this much, slightly more than half a gallon. And basically what we want to do now, we have to cool it off to the 30 degrees or 25 degrees that we mentioned. So for that, basically the ice comes in handy. You just let it in there, and yeah, get the physics do its job. Okay, and yeah, now we have to cool off our wort. We can give it a second for now. The initial basically temperature, and with those couple of seconds, let us measure the original gravity, the gravity before it has been fermented. So we are looking, like, we're hoping for something around original gravity 1.056, and we are Now I'm wondering if it's because of all the other additions, but they actually end up a stronger beer than expected. Yep. Yeah, I think I boiled off a bit too much. Yes. Instead of 1.056, we have more like 1.080, which is on a strong side. On a strong side, I must admit. 80. Well, more like 70. Okay, 70. I guess it does also depend on all the heavy stuff that is in here. It's basically harder to compress, so maybe not that much. We're at 68 more or less. Let's try again. And yeah, it goes, well, it's not going to be that much more alcoholic. Originally, it would have about 5%. Yeah, so I'd say 68. OG 1.068 at, and now it's the important part because we have to check the temperature and then adjust this to this temperature. So the temperature of it is also 50. About 50 degrees Celsius. So with this, in 2 weeks, once the beer is fermented, we'll be actually able to measure how alcoholic is it. And now you can actually give a try. It's not going to taste like beer. It tastes like sugar water, because basically it is sugar water. But you can kind of get the sense of the hops and the general base of the beer. Nicely bitter, not too much. Like very nice and subtle. Yes, I do think that the lactose and the oats made quite a nice base. Yes, this beer is real good. So yes, now let's go back to our lovely hot fermenter. That again is not supposed to be that hot. What we can do is try to stir it inside a bit to kind of exchange the heat with the outside. We can take the thermometer, stuff that we can take it out. And again, everything that touches the beer should be washed. We do not want to waste all those hours that have been spent on making that beer. And the beer is at 50 and something. Well, that's definitely too much, but it's also halfway there. Well, to a freezing point, which we do not want to get the beer to. Well, it's about 55 degrees. That is definitely too much, and we have to keep cooling it out, cooling it off, to just remember, if you just leave it like it is, the outside is going to get cold, but the inside is still going to be hot, and in that case, there's no more heat exchange. Like if the outside is the same temperature as the inside, the container, then it's no longer gonna be cooling. So you do want to kind of make it hot on the outside, so then the cold water on the outside, in the bigger the pot, can absorb the heat from this. So yeah. So yeah, we basically have to do it until it goes to around, yeah, like about 20 degrees. And yeah, that is really cold water, which is good. Let's cool down a bit. Okay, you can now feel that the outside is not getting as warm as quickly as previously. So we gave away a bit of the temperature. And now let us see how much did we give out. Kind of can barely see through the glass. But yeah, it is about 45 degrees. So yes, we are getting it colder. We are getting it colder. Still needs a bit more. Need more work. But yeah, for now we can just let the physics do its thing. All of this will be cleaned in a moment, and we can take a quick look at our started yeasts. Yep, they're definitely doing their thing. You can actually hear the sizzling, and the sizzling is basically the CO2 that is that the yeast converted from the sugar. So that's exactly what happens in a beer. You take it to the correct temperature, leave it at the yeast, and then they will start basically slowly picking apart the sugar molecules in there and yeah, converting them into alcohols and into CO2. So in the beginning, you want to let the CO2 out. So basically, there's going to be a hose out of this into a container that basically allows the CO2 to escape. It bubbles out. And once the fermentation is done, the beer is done, but it still doesn't have the CO2. It's flat. So at that point, we of course want to have a carbonation. So what we do, we add something called a priming sugar, which is basically a tiny bit of sugar, not a lot, because the idea is that once the fermentation is done, all the fermentable sugars are done. Like the yeast cannot eat anymore. But the thing is, they're not dying. They're basically falling asleep, and yeah, they're on the bottom of the fermenter, but also they're generally floating in a beer. This is why sometimes beers that haven't been pasteurized are called live beers, because, well, technically they're alive. Like they have live yeast still in a bottle. So to have the CO2, you add a bit of that sugar, and then you close the bottle. The sugar is there. It's going to wake up the yeast. They're going to eat up the sugar. They will add a bit of alcohol, not much. And then they will produce the CO2, and the CO2 will stay in the bottle, and that's the thing that gives the beer its fizziness. So that depending how fizzy you want your beer, you add more or less priming sugar. And with that sugar, again, there are online calculators that will tell you how much you're supposed to add. If you have a recipe, the recipe usually would also tell you how much do you have there. So that is not very complicated. The only kind of warning there I have is if you put too much priming sugar, it's not just that your beer are going to be very fizzy, but if it's too much, the CO2 will basically be too much for the bottles, and they will explode. And beers like that are called grenades. And you don't want to have those grenades because, I mean, as long as it's somewhere in the cupboard's closed, no one's gonna get hurt, but then you have to mop up all the beer, and the worst kind of thing is like you lost your beer. So it's best to kind of keep in mind how much your priming sugar is supposed to add, the amount of it, and just use as much as recommended in the recipe. Okay, one more try. Let us see what's the temperature right now. Hopefully it's going to be like around 30s. Hopefully, we shall see. And it is 35. Yeah, so basically we could cool it off a bit more and that'll be it. There's no need to cool it off even more. That should be enough. And you know, couple more stirrs to kind of do the last heat exchange. Okay, so with this, now we will need to add the yeast to the fermenter. So again, we're gonna get our trusty funnel, give it a rinse. Give it a rinse, but again, you know, I know I'm like a broken record, but cleaning is the most important part. Clean it in the cleaning agent so we don't have any problems with infections. And once this is done, you can put it in. Well, actually, this doesn't fit, so I'll put it in here. And let's take our very much alive yeast. Is that somewhere? No. Yep. And pour it in. Okay. So the yeast is in. This is officially a beer, became a beer now. And last step, well, maybe not last step, second to last, is to aerate the beer. Basically, the yeast do need oxygen, and that oxygen right now is just on the top of the bottle. The thing is, we want it to be everywhere. So now it's time to vigorously shake your beer for about a minute, which is harder than it looks like. And just try not to break your fingers. Okay, you have a nicely mixed and aerated beer. So now the last part is to basically have some container with our cleaning agent that will basically serve as an airlock. You can use an actual airlock, but in the beginning, the beer might bubble actually quite strongly, and sometimes it actually goes through the airlock, and that is really hard to clean. So what is useful sometimes is to just use a hose like this. Coming up, you have to open it up. Okay, just use a hose and use that one as a form of an airlock together with this container. Give it a last rinse. Yep. Okay. Like this. Now we can actually put it in here into the hole. Come on. Come on. Okay, does not want to go in. And wet fingers do not help. Okay. Okay. So now just submerge this in the water and just make sure that it's submerged and leave it in a dark place for, well, about 2 weeks. So yeah, hey, I'm done with that. I'm done basically. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope it wasn't too boring. It was a bit long, and I get that if it would be one huge video, that would be horrible. Plus, there wouldn't be any time for me to go to the bathroom. So maybe splitting this in smaller parts actually works. So that's it for today. Let me know if you have any questions or comments or feedback. And yeah, if you would like me to do similar kind of stream with a different type of beer, or maybe cover a technique that I didn't cover, or yeah, kind of just generally see me brew more beers live, please let me know. And yeah, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day, or beginning of the day if you're in US. See you later.